Hey everybody, welcome to CodeIgniter from scratch day 4. Thank you for sticking with us. So we are going to continue on today from day 3. If you remember, we started working on how to send emails with CodeIgniter. Today we're going to take that a little bit further and we're going to build a mock newsletter sign up. Just for an example. So you can see here, this is kind of the final example. I've just built a very basic shell. Basically, you just fill out your name. It's gonna, when you click submit, it's gonna post to a send method within our email class. It's gonna perform some validation to ensure that the user does type something in here, and it's also going to validate to make sure that the email address is in fact an email address. It's going to do that validation, and if it passes, we will then send an email and maybe attach a mock newsletter or something along the lines of that. The only thing we're not going to cover here is maybe with a newsletter you'd also want to perform an insert query into a database to store the user's name and email address. You'd want to do something like that as well. I decided not to do that just because it gets too long with these tutorials and I think you might lose interest. So let's get right into it. I'm going to open up, let's go back, and within my websites, you can see here that's my finished one. Here's my little note for myself, begin. So I'm going to rename this to CI Day 4. Once again, this is the exact folder that we used for CodeIgniter Day 3. So I'm going to drag this into TextMate, and we'll do just a little bit of cleanup. Okay, so let's take a look at our controller. We have our email controller right here. And you can just take a quick look. We have our function index. Well, right off the bat, we know immediately when we load this email class or the email page, we don't want to immediately send an email. I did that for an example. We would want that to be stored in a separate method that we could call, not something that runs immediately when the page loads, right? So let's change this to send. Okay. Construct function, we're still not going to get into that just yet, so if you want, you can remove that. I'm just going to keep it in there for now. But we do need to recreate our index function, which will run automatically. And the only thing I want to do here is just load our form. So we're going to say this, load, view, and let's just call this newsletter. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and create our newsletter. New file, newsletter. Some people prefer to do _view or something like that. I usually do that actually quite a bit, but we're just going to keep it simple here. So create that. Create a basic shell here. Newsletter page loaded, just for example. And let's just go ahead and test this actually. So I'm going to make sure MAMP is running. I'm going to open my start page, and I'm going to navigate to CI Day 4. And we're going to load the email class. And remember, we could load the index method as the second parameter, but we're not going to. Doesn't matter. Okay, newsletter page loaded. We have loaded our view. Great. So the next thing we want to think about is actually creating our newsletter page. So within newsletter.php, remember, this is your view. Let's go ahead and get into it. First thing I want to do is let's wrap all of this within a div with an ID of newsletter form. Okay, and within it, we are going to begin by creating our form. So I'm going to do PHP echo. And this is a different way. Rather than doing, the tags form, action, method, all that, we're going to use a helper here. So we're going to do echo form open. And within here, we're going to pass in a string of where it's going to post to when the user clicks on the submit button. In this case, we're going to post to the email class. And the method we want to post to is the one right here, send method. Now, in order to work with the helper, we need to make sure that we've loaded it or auto-loaded it. So I'm going to go back to config. I'm going to go to auto-load, and you can see here I've loaded the database library class, and then here auto-load helper, we need to load the URL helper, and I'm also going to preload the form helper. So really quickly, let's go ahead and take a look at what those do for us. This is the user guide that comes with every installation of CodeIgniter. And let's just go ahead and take a look at the helper. First, the form. You can load it like this, like normal, or you can auto-load it. And you can see here, form open, email sent. So the above example would create a form that points to your base URL. And remember, the base URL is set, if I can find my page, we set the base URL at the very beginning, right here. And in this case, once you load it to your server, it would be www.example.com. But here, we're just pointing it to our installation. I'm going to go ahead and change that from day 3 to day 4. Okay, so just by simply echoing out this form open function, remember helpers are just a list of functions. They're not, it's not in a class form. They're just helper functions. And then this is what would be rendered out. So not only do you save a bunch of typing, but it's just much easier because you don't have to worry about adding the exact URL. So when you switch to different websites and things of that nature, you don't have to worry about this. It'll take care of it for you. Okay. You can also add attributes. I don't want to go over this too much because this might be a long tutorial, but be sure to take a look at that one. And the only other one I want to show you is the URL helper. And this just gives you access to a few functions that make things much easier. For instance, site URL. This is similar, but this would be the first, second, and third. So that would render yoursite.com news local 123. All right. Base URL. Remember, if we want to use that base URL function that we created, that we referenced in our config folder, our config file, we need to make sure that we are loading the URL helper. And generally, I think it's just a good practice. Go ahead and preload that for every project. And we'll get into more of this in the future. I'm going to close that out. And we're going to come back, close this one. And now with those pages loaded, we can work with these form helpers. Just as we opened it, we can go ahead and close it. Here we could just do a normal close form tag, or we could do echo form close. Okay. So there are many ways that we can create our input buttons. I'm sorry, our input, for lack of a better words, our input, can't even think of it, input tags. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways. The first one is we're going to create an array of items, and then we're going to pass that to a form underscore input. So let's first do name data, and that's going to be equal to an array. You're probably going to start seeing some similarities the way CodeIgniter works, where you create an array, you pass in your options, and then you load something, and you pass in your variable name as a parameter. So the first one, these are just attributes within our tags. So the name attribute is going to be, we'll call it name. The next one is going to be the email, and that's going to be equal to, actually, I'm sorry, not email. We want to do the ID field is also going to be name. The next one is, let's just do a value. And I don't want to go over this too much with you. It's going to be equal to a function called SetValue. And basically, I'm going to go over this more, but basically this will, let's say for instance, you press the submit button and it doesn't validate, so the form reloads. Well, whatever you typed into those 2 text boxes is not going to reload as well. So we need a way to remember what the user typed in and repopulate those input boxes with whatever they typed. And SetValue is a CodeIgniter function that will take care of that for us. Okay, so the next one, let's go ahead and clean this up just a bit. And next we are going to do a paragraph tag, and let's create a label. And the label is going to be for the name. It's going to reference the input with an ID of name. We'll do name. And the next thing we're going to do is PHP, and we're going to echo form underscore input. And make sure we close out our p tag. Okay, now if we want to reference these options that we selected, we need to make sure that we pass that in as a parameter, like so. So that is one way that we can do it. Some people think it's a little bit cleaner. You can easily see what you're doing. Let's take a look on the page. And that's not even loading. Let me see. Must have made a quick mistake. Give me just a moment. And pretty sure it's that colon right there. Yep, and that's pretty much what we would expect, right? Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Let's take a look at another one. This time we're just going to do, once again, p And just to save some time, let's copy that. And this time the P is going to be for the email address. And this time we're going to just do it regular input type equals text. The name is going to be email. The ID is going to be email. That way we can reference it possibly with JavaScript or to make sure that the label references that. The value, once again, we're going to do PHP echo set value. And I'm sorry I'm on such a low resolution. We're going to set value, and we need to pass in what we are resetting. And we're going to reset to that email text box. And that looks good, and close out the P. So what I'll do here, just to save some space, is put this onto its new line. Like so. Okay. Come back, reload, and if you check, this is what we end up with. Okay, pretty much the same thing, huh? So choose the method you want to do, and then finally, we have our name and our email. We need to create our submit button. So this time, let's just put in another paragraph tag for just a little bit of styling and margins. We're going to do P echo form. This time is form underscore submit. And we can pass in two parameters here. The first one is going to be submit, and the next one is also submit. And that's just the name and the value, respectively. Come down, name, submit, value, submit. All right. So that's another way. If you notice, the only difference here is that rather than setting an array and passing that array in, here I just entered it directly. So do whichever method you prefer here. So we have our submit button, then we close out our form, and we are going to do some validation here. So we're going to have to come back in a moment, but I think this is okay for now. The next thing I want to do really quickly is add some styling. Just for the example, I'm going to go ahead and put the styling inline, but we will later in the tutorial go and make that an external one. Okay. Let's do label and display block. That's fine for now. We'll do a little more later. So if I click the submit button, actually let's close that out, and if we view it, our form action, this is what creating that form open did. It created a link to the email class in the send method. So now, if we come back, when the user clicks on that submit button, remember, we haven't done any validation yet. We will, but it's going to direct the user to this send function. All right. So if I wanted, I could go echo hello from send, and let's just test this out. Refresh the page, click submit, and we have been directed to the send method. Great. So let's go ahead and modify this a bit. We need to perform validation. We need to ensure that the user does type something into those text boxes. We also want to make sure that a real email address is added. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to load the form validation class. So this load. Once again, you could auto-load it if you want. All right, and it's called form underscore validation, and that will allow us to work with some of those methods. Next, we need to set some rules. So we're going to do this, and remember now we can access that form validation library that we loaded as a class. And this time we're going to set some rules. Okay, so we can pass in 3 parameters to set rules. The first one is going to be the name of the field. What are we referencing? The second one is going to be the error message. They call it the human word. And basically that will be something like a name. And then it will render out, when we echo out the validation errors, it will say the name field is empty, or the name field is required. If you were to call it the Joe the Plumber field, you would just type in Joe the Plumber as the second one. Okay, and then the third one is going to be what validation rules are we going to set? So the first one we are going to reference is the name. And remember, we are referencing, if we come back, just to make sure, name. So we're referencing that one. And then the user-friendly one, we'll just call it name, uppercase. And then the final one, what rules are we going to set? Well, first, I want to trim it. And we're going to separate each one of these with the little bar right there. So let's make sure we get rid of any spaces. And the only thing I want required, we could set a minimum length if we want. There's a bunch you could set. But just to keep it easy, I'm going to do trim, and we're going to make sure that it is required. So somebody has to type in something there. The next one is going to be email. Here, the user-friendly name will be email address. And we're going to trim it, and it's going to be required, but also we want to make sure that it is a valid email. So rather than us having to take care of all those regular expressions or things like that, or filters or whatnot, we're just going to do valid_email, and that'll take care of it for us. Okay, but now remember, just because we set these doesn't mean they run automatically. We need to actually call the run method. So we can do if this form_validation, and we're going to call run. Now, if that returns false, that means there was a problem or nothing was typed in. So if that does happen, let's just reload that form because they did something wrong, correct? So this load view, and if you remember, we called it newsletter. Okay. Otherwise, else, validation has passed. Now send the email. All right. So now let's create a few quick variables. We're going to do name and email. And we need to grab those, whatever the user types into those text boxes from the post superglobal. There's another way CodeIgniter will kind of make this easier for us. Is we're going to do this input. And this input class is loaded automatically, so it's not something you have to load for them. And we can either do get or post. So we're going to do post, and we're going to type in the name that would be posted. Remember, name. The next one, email, is a name of email. Like so. And here it's going to be equal to this. But so you could still do it this way if you wanted. It's your choice. This saves you a bit of time. Okay. And then if we want, I'm not going to echo those out, but just rest assured, if you type in Joe and joe@joe.com, those will store each of those values respectively. So the next one is we want to send the email. So what I'm going to do here is just take all of this right here, because we only want to send an email if the validation passed successfully. So we're going to put that within the else statement. All right. That looks good. So we load our library. We set a new line from NetTuts tutorial. Some jerk changed the our password from the sample account. Guys, don't do that, because I have to create another one, and you're not going to get anything from this account. I'm never going to use it, so you're not going to get any secret information. So we're going to change that to nettouchplustutorials@gmail.com. And you know what? I have this old. Actually, let's just send it to ourselves. gmail.com. And the subject is going to be test newsletter sign up confirmation. Okay, and that should be fine. If we want to attach something, maybe we want to attach the first month of the newsletter when they sign up or something like that. We can still do that. If you remember, in day 3, we created these. We created a path referencing this attachments folder. Let's go ahead. I think I must have deleted that, so let's add it again. And the name is going to be newsletter 1 is fine. So let's create a new file. Okay, that looks fine. So just to go over that one more time, we set a path, and that's equal to this config item server root. So let's go into config, and I think it's still there, server root. You don't have to do this, by the way. If you want, you could go and just reference this jQuery $_server super global. But I wanted to show you guys that you can create your own config items. So do it whichever way you want, and now we're just doing a path equal to ci_day4 attachments newsletter1.txt, and then we want to attach the file. Then finally, we're going to try to send it. Now, what we need to do here is we need to reference whatever the user typed. So we want to change to, I'm sorry, I forgot to do this. The to is going to be equal to email. Okay. And we could also add their name. There's one. We're actually probably not even going to use that. So I think this looks good. There might be a mistake, but let's try it out. So let's come back, refresh the page, and I'm going to type in, oh, there's one more thing I want to show you that we need to do. Within the newsletter.php, we need to echo out, let's say they don't type anything in, we need to echo something out. We can go to the very bottom, right here, and what we'll do is we're going to do php echo validation underscore errors, and that should be okay. So once again, if we view the source, looks like a normal page. Let's click submit, and we are getting a error. Use of undefined constant trim. Use undefined constant required. I must not be referencing something correctly. I'm going to pause for just a second to find this so you don't have to watch me figure this out. Okay, I'm back. Yep, that was just a quick fix. I'm sorry I didn't notice. The rules actually need to be within quotes. Sorry about that. A little bit of a brain freeze, and let's save that, come back, refresh, come back, submit, and now we get these errors echoed out. Great. So you can see they're placed in p tags. Now what if we want to style that differently? What if we want, I don't know, maybe to add some error message or something like that? Is there a way where we can choose what that will be wrapped with? And the answer is yes. Within the validation errors, you guys might know this from WordPress does a lot of stuff like this. Within parentheses, we can type in what the wrapping will be. So it'll be p class error. Come back, refresh the page, resend, come down to the bottom, and now we have p class error. And we can style that accordingly, which we will do shortly. So let's try entering a name, but entering gibberish for the email address. Email address. Notice email address. This is what I meant by the user-friendly name. So if we get rid of name, the name field. So I just want to make sure you understand what I'm referring to. Right up here, name, email address. Okay. So let's go ahead and type in something real. My email address. Let's just send it. This is an account I've had for over a decade that I don't even use, but I have to check it every once in a while. Your email is sentful. Good. Let's go ahead and check that. There's going to be so much spam in here. 639. But I check it every once in a while just in case. It's one of those accounts I had when I was 15. Hurry up and load. I'm going to pause this until it loads. Okay, and you can see, here's my attachment. Test newsletter sign up confirmation. You've now signed up, fool. And there's our newsletter. If we want to open that, this will be our sample newsletter that you can fill in with whatever you want. Okay, so we've actually done quite a bit. The last thing I want to show you how to do is style this a little bit. A few of you asked me, how do you reference a style sheet? And it's actually easy. There's a bunch of ways you can do it. So let's go ahead and within our root, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it CSS. I'm going to create a new file, and for today, I'm going to show you the easiest way to do this. So what I want to do here is, obviously, with the MVC pattern, we don't want to add any styles directly into our view. That doesn't make sense, does it? So I just want to come in here, and I probably should paste this in from my other project, but I'm not going to. But what I will do is just give me a moment so I can copy this from my original project. And of course I can't find it. Let me see. Give me just a moment. Well, I can't find it, so you know what? Let's just go and steal it from here. And come in, paste that in. Bundles. I think there's some kind of tidy in here. Format CSS. All right, that's fine. So, well, it's not too fine, but it's okay. So if you want to go over this really quick, otherwise just go ahead and skip a minute ahead. Label, we're saying display to block to make sure that those items are on their own line. We created an error message. Remember, we wrapped that within a paragraph tag, and we just made it kind of a darker brown, a lighter black color italic. A newsletter form is the wrapping div. Set it to kind of a bluish gray background, set a width, set a margin, some padding, a border. Nothing too interesting. I set all inputs with a type of text to a width of 100% of their container. H2 tags, I set a margin of negative 54 pixels only. Where did it go? There it is. Only to push it up so it looks like it's resting on top of that. And then I styled the submit button differently to get rid of that ugly roundness. And you can see it's got red with a lighter red border and a little bit of a hover effect and that cursor when you mouse over it. It's all there. And then that's it. Pretty simple. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is how do we reference this style sheet? It's actually, if you've never done it, it can be a little bit confusing to figure out the right way. And I'm going to show you a bunch of ways to do it in the future, but for now, let's just go ahead and reference it like this. Link, it's going to be a style sheet. The href is going to be PHP echo, and we're going to echo that base URL, thanks to the URL helper, and that's going to echo out, in my case, localhost :888/CI_day4, and then close that out. And then the next thing we want to do is continue to the CSS folder, and the name of the style sheet is called style.css. Text CSS, media, screen, title. Just get rid of a title. And I think that's fine. So let's go ahead and load this. This is our page, actually. So if I refresh it, that's what we get. And I guess I did not add the heading 2 tag. So we can place that right here. Refresh. And there we go. Pretty simple. Nothing very interesting at all. Okay. Actually, it would probably need to be fixed because that's too large. But you know what, I'm not even going to bother with that because you're going to have your own styling. So that's okay. Click submit, and now we get those error messages. We type in one thing, Jeff Way, email address. Click submit. And our email address was sent. We could also do one other thing within our email folder, is we can say if this email send echo, or we could redirect them to a new page. So if we wanted, we could do this. Load. Actually, you know what I'll do is comment that out and then go this. Load view. Sign up. Confirmation. View. Something like that. And then you could create a new view. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this for you. Sign up. Confirmation. View. Not too interesting to watch, but let's try it one more time. Come back, refresh the page. Refresh the page. Submit. Yay, and we were directed to that new view. Okay, so we've done it. We have learned how to send emails. We've learned how to create a contact form or a newsletter form to allow users to sign up. And we've learned how to attach items, how to validate. So we have done an incredible amount of work. Really, total between these two videos, maybe 45 minutes. And now, the amazing thing here is just check out the validation here. This is about it. Imagine having to do all that validation yourselves, whether you want to use filter vars or regular expressions or whatnot. It's just, it's really confusing. Here, you load the form validation class. We set some rules, just saying, you know what, that name field is going to be trim it and make it required. The email, we're going to make a valid email. We could even do more. We could stack these as much as we want. If we want to set a min length on the name or something like that, you could. And then all we do is we call run. And if it returns true, we can move on. If it doesn't, we'll just reload that view altogether. So thank you guys so much for watching day 5. We're going to continue on with something else. I'm not sure. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any requests. You guys keep requesting a login form. I promise we're going to go through a whole whole membership thing, but we need to learn the fundamentals before we get into all the sessions and all that. Thank you guys so much. I will see you next week. I'm Jeffrey Way. Bye.